There's a reason some wartime manuals were never released to the public. Not because they revealed nuclear secrets or advanced weapons, but because they described traps so brutal, so disturbingly efficient, that even their own creators feared what they had built. During World War II, deep in the forests and battlefields of Europe and Asia, soldiers learned that the most terrifying weapon wasn't explosive, or chemical, or mechanical. It was the ground itself. One trap, known only in fragments of erased field manuals, came to be called the Step Snare, a weapon so effective that it was deliberately wiped from both Allied and Axis records after the war. To understand why this device existed, we have to go back to the occupied territories of World War II. Resistance fighters, ordinary villagers, farmers, and mechanics were forced to battle trained armies with almost nothing. No artillery, no air support. Often, not even firearms. When you have no guns, you turn to your surroundings. Every branch, every pit, every stretch of earth becomes a potential ally. And in that desperation, creativity often replaces technology. The Step Snare was born out of this mindset, a design made from wood, soil, and human psychology. It didn't need ammunition. It needed only one thing: trust. The trust every soldier places in the ground beneath his feet. The original Step Snare was deceptively simple. A shallow pit, no more than a few feet deep, was dug and lined with sharpened stakes, sometimes made from bamboo, sometimes from metal scavenged off wreckage. These stakes were fire-hardened, occasionally coated in oil or sap to slow rot, and sometimes even treated with natural toxins from plants or waste. The pit was covered with a thin lattice made from flexible saplings or split bamboo strips. On top of that, a thin layer of dirt, twigs, and leaves was laid so carefully that even a cautious soldier couldn't tell it apart from solid ground. When the unlucky victim stepped on it, the surface gave way. Not completely, but just enough for the leg to drop through. The stake below drove upward, piercing through boot and flesh. It didn't kill instantly. That was the point. A fatal trap removes one soldier. A crippling trap removes several: medics, stretcher-bearers, commanders, and the morale of the entire unit. The brilliance and horror of the Step Snare wasn't the wound it caused. It was the fear it created. Soldiers began to distrust every patch of ground. Forest floors became nightmares. Patrols slowed to a crawl, each man testing the soil before stepping. The sound of breaking branches or shifting leaves sent waves of panic through squads already stretched thin by exhaustion and hunger. And that's how the trap won its battles, not with explosions, but with hesitation. Because in combat, when a soldier stops trusting the ground beneath him, the fight is already lost. After the war ended, engineers and strategists reviewed countless resistance reports and battlefield debriefings. They found evidence of step snares, crude sketches, fragments of instruction, even captured traps from abandoned sites. What they concluded was chilling. These devices, though simple, caused injuries that were slow, agonizing, and nearly impossible to treat in the field. Infection, shock, and psychological trauma followed. Within 2 years, both Allied and Axis engineering departments quietly removed all references to step snares, stake pits, and similar devices from official manuals. They were deemed inhumane and unsuitable for conventional warfare. Some sections were literally blacked out. Others were burned. The trap itself disappeared, but the idea behind it continued to evolve. Every trap, no matter how crude, is a reflection of strategy. The step snare operated on 2 unshakable truths of human behavior. First, people trust what looks stable. Second, people follow the path of least resistance. By turning those instincts against the enemy, resistance fighters turned the terrain itself into a weapon. That same principle would later inspire a very different kind of thinking: defensive landscaping and survival engineering. Modern survivalists now apply these lessons ethically, using noise, light, and terrain to detect rather than harm. A gravel path that crunches loudly underfoot can act as an early warning system. Uneven terrain can slow an intruder. Strategic lighting can funnel movement where you want it to go. These are echoes of the same logic that once made the step snare so effective. Knowledge that once caused fear now protects lives. The step snare also demonstrated an art form that few modern soldiers truly master: camouflage. Resistance engineers spent hours studying how the forest floor looked after rain, how sunlight hit different patches of soil, how moss and leaves aged over days. They didn't just build traps, they built illusions. The trap worked not because it was complex, but because it was invisible. This same discipline lives on in peaceful uses. Survivalists, photographers, and wildlife researchers all use environmental blending to conceal equipment or protect resources. Whether hiding a camera, a food cache, or an emergency shelter, the lesson remains timeless. What looks natural will never be questioned. By 1947, the step snare was officially gone. Yet, veterans who had served as field engineers and guerrilla instructors carried its philosophy home. They passed it on quietly. Not the trap, but the thinking behind it. In the early Cold War years, many of those same concepts reappeared in military survival manuals under new terms: terrain denial, passive defense, environmental awareness. The weapon had been erased, but the wisdom endured. The idea that environment itself can be shaped to favor survival. For modern preppers and homesteaders, that lesson is gold. You don't need force when you have foresight. You don't need weapons when you have control of space. Today, search and rescue teams, civil engineers, and military trainers use those same lessons in reverse. Not to endanger life, but to save it. They study unstable ground, test soil resistance, and build safe paths across debris and mud. The same physics that once made a trap deadly now helps rescuers reach survivors faster. It's a perfect irony. The tools of destruction transformed into the science of protection. The difference between a lethal trap and a life-saving route lies entirely in intent. And that distinction, that moral boundary, is what defines civilization itself. The step snare may have vanished from training manuals, but its principles remain beneath our feet. It's a story not about cruelty, but about awareness. A reminder that intelligence, not violence, defines true survival. The people who built these traps didn't have advanced tools or high-tech gear. They had observation, patience, and the will to endure. And in that sense, the step snare is more than a weapon of war. It's a forgotten lesson in how power comes not from domination, but from understanding. Because in survival, just as in war, control of the ground is control of the situation. If you value uncovering history that others tried to erase, make sure to subscribe, because the past still guards its secrets in plain sight.